Everyone who currently receives Social Security or plans to receive it later on is facing a future reduction in benefits. That's not simply my opinion. That information comes directly from the Social Security Trustees Report, the congressional record, and several official analyses. Different reports vary slightly. Some estimate a few months earlier, some a little later, maybe a percentage point higher or lower. But the overall conclusion remains the same. According to the Social Security Trustees Report, beneficiaries have about 81 more payments at the current amount. After that, the 82nd payment could be reduced by approximately 23%. Why is that happening? Because lawmakers have failed to take meaningful action for more than 4 decades. And why haven't they fixed it during all that time? Because the public hasn't pressured them strongly enough to address it. That's the real problem. Determined it's our responsibility to make elected officials truly work for the people they represent. Why haven't we forced action? Obviously, none of us want our monthly checks reduced. Nobody wants smaller benefits. But whenever we contact politicians, what usually happens? The moment they start talking, they feed us misleading information, and too many people accept it without question. Then we move on while they sit back laughing because they know the public believed them again. Same old story, there's always another person willing to fall for it. So today, we're going to break down the claims politicians constantly repeat. I even put together a cheat sheet right here. The next time you call your representative or attend a town hall meeting, you can download this sheet. I'll place it in the YouTube description, Facebook comments, and everywhere else so you can keep it handy. All right, let's go through them one by one. We'll cover all 12 myths. Myth number 1 is that Social Security is going bankrupt. That is completely false. Social Security is not disappearing. It will continue existing for hundreds and hundreds of years unless politicians eventually hand it over to Wall Street, which honestly seems to be the long-term goal behind their refusal to fix the system. They don't want to solve it. They want their financial industry friends, the ones funding campaigns and influencing policy, to take control of it. Social Security itself is not vanishing. The real issue is that benefits may eventually be reduced. As long as people are still employed and contributing payroll taxes, and as long as society hasn't been entirely replaced by robots and artificial intelligence, the system will continue operating. If we ever reach a world where machines completely replace workers, then we're dealing with a much bigger economic problem. But right now, people still work. Americans still earn paychecks and continue contributing to Social Security through payroll taxes. As long as those contributions continue coming in, Social Security can still send payments to retirees, even if the amount changes. Currently, roughly 91% of the benefits people receive come from taxes paid by today's workers. About 9% comes from the trust fund. Next year, it may rise to 12% or 13%, then continue increasing until eventually the trust fund portion runs out. That's where the projected 23% reduction comes from. So again, Social Security is not going bankrupt. It can continue functioning for generations unless it gets turned over to private financial interests. Myth number 2 says Congress stole or raided the trust fund. That's also inaccurate. Back in the Marine Corps, we used to say everything is present and accounted for. If you read the Social Security Trustees Report, the numbers are clearly listed. At the end of 2023, the trust fund contained approximately $2.6 trillion. At the same time, about $1.2 trillion came in from payroll tax contributions made by workers. Then there's interest earned from Treasury investments, which I'll explain shortly. Meanwhile, roughly $1.3 trillion was paid out in benefits. So yes, more money went out than came in. The difference, around $100 billion, was covered by the trust fund. The money still exists. It's helping pay benefits right now. This narrative that the trust fund was robbed or emptied is another distraction politicians use to silence criticism. But people are tired of being ignored. Myth number 3 says the treasury bonds inside the trust fund are just worthless IOUs. That argument makes no sense. Those bonds are backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government. Countries all over the world invest in Treasury securities because they're considered among the safest investments available. Your retirement accounts, pensions, and 401ks likely contain Treasury holdings too, especially if you're near retirement age. If those bonds suddenly became worthless, Social Security would be the least of our concerns, because the entire global financial system would collapse alongside it. Treasury bonds remain one of the safest financial assets in existence. Myth number 4 claims undocumented immigrants are draining Social Security. That statement is completely false. I've explained this many times before. When I worked for Social Security, I personally saw how strict the verification process is. The agency uses the SAVE system and coordinates with the Department of Homeland Security to confirm immigration status. People who are in the country illegally cannot receive Social Security retirement benefits, disability benefits, spousal benefits, Medicare or Medicaid through the federal system. Some individual states may choose to provide health care using state funding, but federal Social Security benefits are unavailable to undocumented immigrants. If someone is not legally authorized to be here, they cannot legally collect Social Security benefits. Ironically, many undocumented workers actually contribute money into the system. Some work under false Social Security numbers or temporary tax identification numbers issued by the IRS. The IRS mainly wants tax revenue regardless of immigration status. Because of that, billions of dollars flow into Social Security from people who will never qualify to receive benefits later. Estimates suggest around $30 billion enters the system annually from workers without legal status. They contribute, but they usually never collect. Before moving further, I want to answer an important question from a viewer, because it deserves attention. This woman explained that she applied for widow's benefits, but received a denial letter. The notice stated her claim was denied because required documents were supposedly missing, but according to her, she already mailed everything Social Security requested. She's also worried because the letter says no future payments are owed, and she's afraid she might lose disability benefits too. She sounded extremely upset. Here's the good news. She's okay. Her disability benefits are not in danger. Honestly, I expected situations like this once that new system rollout began. Officials pushed ahead with a brand new process nobody had properly tested. Then they delayed it again, and eventually backed away from parts of it because they realized they weren't prepared. Whenever agencies rush poorly designed systems into operation, paperwork gets lost. Offices become overwhelmed, documents disappear somewhere inside the system. Unfortunately, this situation sounds exactly like that. She submitted the documents they requested, but somewhere along the process, they were misplaced. The claims specialist handling her surviving spouse application should not have denied the case solely for missing evidence. When I handled disability claims, I rarely denied someone immediately if they were actively trying to obtain records. If someone told me, I'm still waiting on my divorce decree, I'd simply allow additional time and follow up later. That's what should have happened here. If the documents weren't immediately available, the employee should have contacted her and asked whether they were still pending or already mailed. Instead, the claim was denied too quickly. But fortunately, this is a very easy issue to correct. She simply needs to call the office and explain the paperwork was already sent. If the agency lost original documents, replacing them becomes the agency's responsibility. The denial letter only means Social Security could not approve the surviving spouse claim without locating the documents. It does not affect her existing disability benefits at all. If she's already receiving disability payments, those continue normally. She should contact the office directly. If the local office doesn't respond, she can call the national 800 number and request an MDW be sent to the local office. That message basically asks why the claim was denied without proper follow-up. This was poor customer service, no question about it. And that brings us to another common criticism, that Social Security customer service is terrible. Sometimes it is, but there's a reason. Many politicians intentionally underfund and overwhelm the agency because making Social Security frustrating helps create public anger toward the program itself. If people become convinced the system is dysfunctional, it becomes easier for politicians to argue that privatization is the solution. That has been the strategy for decades. Attack the agency, weaken customer service, spread negative myths, then convince the public private financial firms can manage retirement better. That's been the broader plan since the 1980s. Make the program look broken, frustrate the public, and eventually push people toward Wall Street alternatives. Of course, once private financial companies take control, they'll gamble with retirement money, collect massive profits, and ordinary people will suffer the consequences afterward. Now let's move to myth number 5. Young people will get nothing from Social Security. Politicians love using generational division. They encourage younger people to resent retirees while encouraging older generations to blame younger workers. Decades ago, people said the same thing. Those older people are using up all our Social Security. The exact same argument has existed since the program started in 1935. Don't let politicians divide generations against each other. That conflict only benefits them. Social Security will continue existing long into the future. But politicians also used generational politics during the 1980s when they raised the retirement age from 65 to 67. They told older workers it wouldn't affect them personally, only younger generations. Now they're trying something similar again by floating ideas about increasing the retirement age to 69 or 70. Once again, they frame it as something that won't affect current retirees, but will affect younger workers instead. In other words, they want one generation to sacrifice another. Personally, I don't think we should accept that. Myth number 6 claims Social Security is driving the national debt. That's completely inaccurate. Social Security is funded separately through dedicated payroll taxes and legally cannot borrow money the way the federal government does elsewhere. The national debt, now approaching tens of trillions of dollars, is a separate issue entirely. Social Security has its own funding structure and its own trust fund. Myth number 7 says Social Security is simply welfare. That's misleading. People often confuse Social Security with SSI, which stands for Supplemental Security Income. SSI is a welfare-based program funded through general tax revenue. It serves low-income elderly or disabled individuals with limited resources. That money does not come from the Social Security Trust Fund. This year, the maximum SSI payment is around $994 monthly. So if someone you know receives less than that from Social Security, encourage them to check whether they qualify for SSI assistance. Traditional Social Security retirement benefits work differently. The system calculates benefits based on a worker's highest 35 earning years. Then it uses a formula involving average indexed monthly earnings and bend points. Lower income workers receive a higher percentage replacement rate than higher income workers. For example, someone averaging $1,000 monthly earnings over a lifetime might receive around 90% replacement in retirement. Meanwhile, someone averaging $10,000 monthly earnings will not receive $9,000 from Social Security. Instead, they might receive roughly 35%, or around $3,500 monthly. That's how the system was designed. Meanwhile, some groups outside the standard system receive larger advantages due to legislative changes politicians labeled as fairness. Ironically, some laws called fair actually placed more financial pressure on Social Security itself. Both Republican and Democratic administrations have supported policies affecting the system negatively over time. So at some point, people need to stop viewing this purely through a partisan lens because neither side has truly protected Social Security effectively. Myth number 9 says benefit cuts are the only possible solution. That's simply not true. Politicians act like they've exhausted every option when they really haven't seriously pursued several major reforms. One widely supported solution is raising or eliminating the payroll tax cap. Right now, Social Security taxes only apply up to a certain income threshold, currently about $184,500. Someone earning $50,000 pays Social Security taxes on every dollar earned all year long. But someone earning millions stops paying Social Security payroll taxes once their income passes the cap early in the year. A person making $5 million might only contribute Social Security taxes during the first few weeks of January, while average workers contribute year-round. That cap needs to be reconsidered. Eliminating or raising it significantly would strengthen Social Security finances, but many wealthy individuals oppose that idea, so instead politicians push misleading narratives. Myth number 10 says wealthy people already pay their fair share. We basically covered that issue already. Next comes the claim that annual COLA increases fully keep up with inflation for seniors. Most retirees know that doesn't always feel true. People receive a modest increase, then Medicare Part B premiums rise almost immediately and eat away part of it. Many experts argue COLA calculations should reflect spending patterns of older Americans more accurately, since seniors face different costs than younger households. There's definitely room for improvement there. Myth number 12 says Social Security can be fixed simply by eliminating fraud, waste, and abuse. That became a huge talking point recently. Elon Musk and others suggested massive fraud existed, including millions of deceased people supposedly receiving benefits, but those claims never matched reality. He eventually realized the databases being reviewed were misunderstood from the beginning. In other words, they were searching in the wrong place while assuming they'd uncovered something huge. Yes, fraud exists within Social Security, like it does in any large organization, but it's relatively small. Less than 1% of payments overall. And many overpayments happen because beneficiaries voluntarily continue receiving checks while resolving reporting issues, not because of organized fraud. The real way to fight fraud is by staffing the agency properly. When I managed one of the largest Social Security offices in the country, investigations happened because employees followed up on tips. Someone reports a person working while collecting disability. Someone else reports an SSI recipient who inherited money but failed to report it. Employees investigate. Inspectors from the Office of Inspector General get involved when necessary. That's how fraud prevention actually works. But when thousands of employees are removed from the agency, fewer investigations happen and more improper payments slip through. Cutting staff while claiming to fight fraud creates the opposite result. So those are the 12 major myths, although honestly there are many more. I could probably write an entire book about the misinformation politicians spread regarding Social Security. The next time you attend a town hall or contact an elected official, keep that information sheet nearby. Then when they repeat one of these misleading claims, you'll be prepared with actual evidence, official reports, and documented sources to challenge them directly.